Do we agree the four Gospels are written by anonymous authors?
I do think there's contextual reason to think John wrote John.
Do you have a definition of who John was, his name, his life, where he was born, what his community said about him, when he was born, when he died? Who's that person, John? John is just the first name. That, by the way, was added later on, which all scholars would agree. So when you say John wrote John, it assumes that we know who John was, but we don't. Hence the entire idea of the anonymity of the writers. So the writers of the gospel are anonymous, number one. Number two, what is the earliest manuscripts of these written gospels?
Could be wrong, but I want to say there's parts of Mark that are pretty early.
First, let's start with the whole thing, then I'll talk about the parts. The whole thing, how many years do you think it's after Jesus?
Okay, that one I'm not honestly sure. I want to say probably like 30. It's going to be a while.
The earliest carbon-dated manuscript that we have written is the Codex Sinaiticus, and it is nearly 400 years. It's from the 4th century. Nearly 400 years after Jesus. By the way, you're welcome to fact-check this information right now if you have a computer, if you don't believe what I say. So this is the earliest manuscript you have. It's called the Codex Sinaiticus, and then you have the Codex Vaticanus. They're all from the 4th century. This is the earliest you have. Okay? Now, what about the fragments? The smallest, earliest thing you have is something called the P52. It's as big as a card like this from John. Doesn't have any important information, nothing relevant, nothing that can be used for belief. It's just like a random small writing. Okay? That is more than 150 years after Jesus. That's the earliest fragment you have when we talk about carbonation, which has no relevant information. The rest comes from the early 3rd century, 4th century, like I said, fragments here and there. The 4th century, you have the full thing.
I don't know that that means that they originated at the point where we have the earliest manuscripts.
They're copies. So they would say that it's a copy of a copy. Yeah, but the problem with that, if you don't have the source, you do not know what was copied and what wasn't copied. You do not know the reliability of copying. If the copiers, the people who copied, are anonymous, then you cannot trust the information. So even if they are copies of, by the way, they would say it's copies of copies of copies of copies. You have no clue. And we have writings from church fathers as early as the 2nd, 3rd century, like Origen of Alexandria and others, that will, by the way, they are you can say the first textual criticism scholar. And he's talking about that the corruption of scribes has spread far and wide because of the arrogance of the scribes. They're changing the writings. We're talking about in the 2nd century. So when we have something written in the 4th century, right, there is a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of anonymous scribes, then absolutely it's not reliable in any way, shape, or form for us to come and say, hence the Quran's claim about conjecture. You see, the more we talk, the more we realize the Quranic claim is true. You have an anonymous writing of what we know are scribes that have been corrupting and changing, anonymous writers, hundreds of years later claiming something happened. We cannot trust this as reliable information. Nobody with his right mind is going to say, oh yeah, this is proof that this happened.